Hey, good morning everybody. Matt Zerby here with Wasco Nursery, and welcome to another morning episode of Coffee Chat with Matt. As promised, today is part 2 of my own yard. So a couple weeks ago I gave you a little tour of the backyard and showed you some of the projects that I'm working on and some of the things that I've had success with and some things that I haven't had success with. And now we're going to make our way around to the front yard and look at a few things over there. Just show you some fun plants that I've acquired over the years, and just some a few challenges that I've got going on. And nothing is set in stone in my garden. I like to move things around from time to time. I like to experiment and try new plants. So you'll see a little bit of that, and we'll as always answer any questions that you may have. So in the chat or comment section, feel free to put whatever questions you may have, whether it's about an individual plant in my yard or just in general, and we'll do our best to answer those either on the fly or after the fact, or via the chat. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get started. Let me just turn the camera around. All right, so I'm actually still in the backyard here, but we're gonna walk around front. Just a few of my pots that I have going on. This is actually my flower garden and vegetable garden over here. So this is actually still the back corner, and then we're gonna wander around front. So I love the hummingbirds. I've mentioned that before. So I've planted all different types of salvia in here, Radio Red and Wendy's Wish, and black and blue. There's a giant celosia, giant red coxcomb, a couple other salvias, and then over here I have my tomatoes and jalapeno peppers here, and bell peppers over there in the back. And some of you know I'm a weather buff, so it's my little weather station right there. And then I have in between the peppers, there's a little traditional rain gauge. So all right, we're going to wander around the side and into the front. This is a witch hazel right here. This is actually called Autumn Embers. And it is for sure, I think, the most beautiful fall coloring witch hazel out there. Beautiful purple and orange tones, some yellow and red in there. This particular plant, I planted this 3 years ago. It was about 6.5, 7 feet tall. And that very first winter was the polar vortex winter, and this plant died all the way to the ground. And I'm going to kind of zoom in here and show you the stems. I don't know, you can't even see them way inside there, but there you go. Now you can sort of see deep inside. You've got some cut stems. So I just cut this plant all the way down to the ground and have allowed it to grow back. It's now about 3 feet tall. It's looking great, and it's going to be fine. So I chose not to dig it out and replace it. Around it, oh look, I have a buckthorn in the middle. Around it, I have pink turtlehead. So this plant is called Hot Lips Pink Turtlehead. This thing right here in the middle that the Japanese beetles are eating. Actually, I guess that's a crabapple, not a buckthorn. So there actually used to be out here in the grass, there used to be two very large crab apples, and they were old and diseased and shading this side of the house too much, clogging the gutters. And so I cut those down. You can sort of still see the circles in the lawn where they were. I've replaced it with, this is just a little baby Eastern redbud that I grew from seed, and so it's doing its thing. And over here is an emerald pillar Norway spruce. So emerald pillar is a very little known plant. It's a dwarf Norway spruce. It looks like a traditional Norway spruce, but it grows much, much, much slower. It averages about maybe 3 or 4 inches a year instead of 24 inches a year like a traditional Norway spruce. But a little known plant. It was developed found by a nurseryman up in northern Illinois, right along the Wisconsin border. And he hasn't marketed it or anything. I've been buying them from him for several years, and it is just a fantastic plant. Hardy, tough, and small. Mature size is going to be only about 20 feet high. So maybe a quarter or a third of the size of a traditional Norway spruce. So kind of a fun plant. This is brand new. Like I said, I had these large crab apples, so this area was heavy shade. I moved some hostas out of here into some other areas of the yard. And just this season, I planted lavender all along here. So this is the south side of the house. It is very hot and dry. And the lavender is looking great. I think in one of my talks, I mentioned watering. So for the first couple of weeks that these were in here, I watched the plants, and as they started to wilt a bit, I would water them. Some days it was every 3 days, sometimes it was every day. When it was really, really hot and dry at the beginning of June, I haven't watered them since. So ever since I got them established, I would say by the time the rains started in mid-June, I have not had to water them since, and they're looking fantastic. This is my oak leaf hydrangea. I believe it is Snow Queen. Really flowered very nicely this year. It's adjusting a bit to the fact that it is now in mostly sun. It was in mostly shade before, but now it's in mostly sun. So doing okay though, looking great, and lots of new growth, lots of flowers. So pretty happy with that. I still have one more hosta here that is not real happy with the sun, and so we're going to move that out of here. Last year I pulled out a tree, and I'll just kind of point over here. This is an amber maple right here that is way too close to the house. You can see it's hanging over the roof into the gutter. It's also rotten. If I gave you some close-ups, you'd see there's some wounds on the tree that go all the way through the tree. It's all rotten. And so normally I wouldn't plant a tree this close to another tree. But my goal is to take this amber maple down probably this fall, maybe next year. We'll see. But what I've planted to replace it here is a native flame American hornbeam. So it's still a younger tree. I still have a bamboo pole on it just to keep it kind of a little straighter. But beautiful fall color, native tree, also known as a blue beech or a musclewood. So as the tree matures, the bark takes on a really muscular texture, which is very cool. Kind of work our way around. And I don't think I mentioned, I've got a couple of these in the back. I don't think I talked about them last week. The ones in the back actually are doing far better. But this is a Father Gila called Blue Shadow. Really one of my favorite small shrubs. 2 to 3 feet tall, powdery blue foliage. You kind of look at that foliage there, and it's just got that really nice blue color. And that blue color, as I mentioned last week, is actually a powder that's on the leaf. And so, when it rains or if I'm watering or something, you can kind of see some spots on there, and that's because it's sort of washed off a bit. But in the back, they're really nice and blue. They had a really nice white bottle brush type flower. So this little thing that's left on here, that's what's left of the flower. So really nice white bottle brush flowers. But I love it, the blue color in with the green of the vinca or periwinkle right there. And then this is a sad looking emerald fountain Canadian hemlock. This plant really looked great until the heavy wet snow we had last year really kind of did a number on it. I trimmed out a few broken branches. It's still very alive and healthy, so we're gonna let it go, and if I need to do a little trimming, I will. But otherwise, it's doing well. And I wanted to show you up here. I thought about trimming some of these things out beforehand for you, but thought I'd show you. This is a Weigela called My Monet. So it's a variegated Weigela, and you can see right here are a few non-variegated stems. So in a lot of plants, the variegation, which is that white and pink along the edges there, that variegation is not very stable, and so sometimes a plant will revert. back to whatever its parent was. And in this case, it's a green-leafed white Gila here. So if I let this go, the larger, obviously faster growing, you can see, you know, this side put on 2 inches of new growth, and this side is put on 12 inches of new growth. So if I let that go, it's going to overtake the plant, and it's not going to be a My Monet anymore. It's going to be whatever that is there. And so what I recommend with that is just to reach in there with a pair of pruning shears and just snip those branches off. The same thing happens on Variegated Beach, like tricolor. Oftentimes you'll see a purple branch in there, and you can just reach in the tree if possible and trim it out or let it go. Right in the back over here, I have Mr. Bowling Ball Arborvitae. They also sustained some winter damage. In fact, on that middle one, you can see there's a branch there. It was broken, not fully. It was just kind of partially broken, so I left it in there hoping that it was going to kind of heal itself and survive. But looking at that yellowy spot in the middle tells me that it has not healed and is going to have to be trimmed out. But really nice texture, feathery texture, low, easy to grow. This here, I wish I had showed you this a couple weeks ago. I think I posted some photos. This is a dwarf Kusa dogwood called Little Poncho. So Little Poncho has star-shaped white flowers in the late spring, early summer, absolutely covered with flowers. And it should develop, although I'm not really seeing any, so perhaps the birds have already picked them off, but it should develop. There's a couple. That is what's left over from the flower, that little ball, and that will turn bright pink, almost like a raspberry, and is edible. The birds like it. People eat it too. I've tasted it. I don't really care for it, but so that's a Kusa dogwood called Little Poncho, and in time, the bark will get a real mottled, like white and gray and brown look to it, which is kind of cool. All along the front here, I have Roseanne Cranesbill or Roseanne geranium, and I just kind of let it go. It does a great job of choking out weeds. I think there were maybe 7 or 9 plants in here to start with. It's been blooming since May. You can see those bright purple flowers on there, and it'll just keep blooming. I have a little bit of bacterial leaf spot that came in after the 3 weeks of rain that we had in June. Middle of June to early July, it basically rained almost every day or every other day. Totally harmless. Doesn't look amazing, but is totally harmless, so I don't do anything to it. And some coral bells. This is a variegated Japanese white pine. Really like adding, as I mentioned last week, adding dwarf conifers as little statement pieces all throughout my garden beds, so you'll see that here and there. I know I have a lot of favorites. People tease me about it. This is for sure one of my favorite perennials. This is called Wild Swan Anemone, and it's just starting to bloom. So you've got these beautiful purple flower buds, little rounded flower buds, and they open to this white, and if you were here, you'd notice just a hint of purple to the flower, with that really nice yellow center. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in here. One of the things that I love about this anemone is it does not reseed itself at all, or at least I've never had it reseed itself, unlike other anemones which kind of get out of hand. I've never seen it go rogue. It has flowered so reliably for me. It will bloom from right now. So, typically around July 4th is when the first flowers open. And from there, it'll bloom until almost hard frost. So it'll bloom into October, at least late September. And it's just a blooming machine. So I really, really like that. This particular section here gets about 3 hours of sunlight a day, so we'll go out there in the yard. But I have this old Crimson King maple that's basically due west, so the western sun is blocked by the maple, and then the house is over here, So, you know, it's kind of cloudy today, but you would see a couple hours of midday sun and then shade the rest of the day. So they've done very well in here. As I come around, I can see that we have a monarch on my pieweed. Yeah, so we'll just kind of check him out. This pieweed actually just seeded itself over here. I didn't plant it here, and but I love it, so I left it go here. It is a nice contrast. The foliage and the flower, that kind of smoky little flower, is really nice next to these massive flowers on the perennial hibiscus, which I see that the water feature that I just fixed this morning has stopped working again. It was working 5 minutes ago. There's a the pump has a loose pipe, so I can actually hear the pipe. The pump is running, but the connection to the pipe is not great, so it's going to take a little more work, but apologize, had it running. And so those are basalt columns. They're just sitting on a basin, and it just recirculates, and it's great. I don't have any plumbing or anything. It's just it's got some lights shining on it at night, and then it recirculates the same water. Right there is that's a whole mess of sedum, so a few different varieties of sedum that I planted, and then a variegated iris right there, which are really great. These are new. I just planted these last year. This is prairie drop seed called Terra. It's a dwarf prairie drop seed, and I just kind of want that to fill in and give it a nice soft texture next to the taller pieweed and hibiscus. And then I've got some Elegans Nest Spruce to give a little bit of evergreen. And then I have, this is Pixie Meadow Bright Coneflower. Pixie Meadow Bright is towards the top of my list. It's a variety it's a hybrid that was developed by Chicago Botanic Garden. It is a very, very, very heavy flowering variety. It is very clean. It doesn't get any spotted on the foliage. You can just see those beautiful leaves in there, beautiful pink flowers. The butterflies absolutely love it, so they're on it all the time. And then when the flowers are kind of fading, that center portion of the flower, that little cone in the center where they get the name coneflower, that little cone is a seed, and the goldfinches absolutely love it, so they'll be out here. And this taller coneflower right over here is actually just a purple coneflower that reseeded itself in here. So the front, all of this is called Pixie Meadow Bright. And then there's that one taller coneflower towards the back that's just a stray, but I've let it go in there. This is, if you remember from last week, I talked about my hybrid Japanese Korean maple called Northwind. Well, this is its cousin, part of the same breeding program, and this is called Ice Dragon. And this was a little 1 gallon Ice Dragon maple that I planted here as a sample. And then the rabbits, that first winter, which was just 2 years ago, that first year, the rabbits just absolutely ate this trunk to bits. And you can kind of see that bark damage on there. I thought for sure the plant was going to die because there was so much bark damage. And I did have to trim a fair amount of the plant out. You can kind of see those stems on there that I cut out. But it has rebounded and is doing great now. All that orangey reddish stuff is its new growth, and it's doing great. So I'm gonna leave it and keep working with it. Very hardy, made it through polar vortex winter and everything else, so it's kind of great. Big fan of the allium. For whatever reason, one of these plants, this is Peekaboo Allium. So Peekaboo is just like Summer Beauty, except for the flowers just sit right next to the plant instead of sticking up high like you see in that one right there. So where the flowers are sticking up higher, that's Summer Beauty, and where the flowers are sitting just right on top of the plant or right in the plant like that, that's called Peekaboo. And I have that backed there with Karen azalea. So it's a really nice kind of semi-evergreen azalea. And then next to it is Yuki Snowflake Deutzia, which flowers white in the spring. And then here's one of my prized possessions, in terms of plants anyway. This is a dwarf ginkgo called Majestic Butterflies. And I'm going to show you why they call it Majestic Butterfly. So you can kind of see how the leaves have that really neat indentation and cut right down the center, making it look like butterfly wings. So it's a sport of jade butterflies. But Majestic Butterflies is known for a random variegation. And I'll just kind of zoom in here so you can see that. It is very lightly variegated. There's not a lot of variegation in the plant, but you can see that down there, which is really cool. Almost looks like someone took a paintbrush and just went through there with those yellow stripes. So that's my ginkgo. It's going to need some trimming this year. I actually brought that from our previous home and dug it up and moved it over here before we sold the other house. Nothing too exciting over here. This is I do like this, as I mentioned, little specimen evergreens. This is a dwarf moss cypress, and it has done exceptionally well. I've been really impressed with it. It grows quite slowly, really nice soft texture, and it gets piled on snow. Obviously this is the front walk, and it just gets piled on, and it has done very, very well. Gomphrena and a yellow supertunia in here. I, for the last time, have tried without success to plant supposedly heat and sun tolerant Lobelia. So that's that little blue flower. I loved the color combination when I first planted it, but I cannot get that Lobelia to take. As soon as it gets hot, it starts to peter out, despite my best efforts of watering and caring for it. So this is my collection of Plumeria here. So they're also known as frangipanis, or the Hawaiian lay flower. So those are fun. Those are tropical. I have to bring them in during the winter months. So that was kind of the front foundation of the house. And I'm just going to show you a few highlights out in the yard here. So if we stand back at a distance, our wellhead is actually in the middle of this bed. And so I wanted to kind of surround that and hide it, but not make it look like I was hiding it. So I've got this nice circular bed out here. Yuki cherry blossom deutzia in the front with beautiful vanilla strawberry hydrangeas in the center. And then right next to it, this mammoth yellow plant, which looks like a huge shrub. You can see it's almost as big as the hydrangeas. This is a perennial. This is called Sun King Aurelia. And it is, if I stand next to it, it's easily up to my shoulders. I'm 6 feet tall, so it's got to be at least 5 at this point, feet tall. It's going to throw some flower stalks here in another month or so. It'll be a stalk with a white golf ball sized flower on it. So really a very striking perennial, but make sure you give it room. It is a massive, massive plant. And it actually reseeded itself. I found a couple little seedlings. There's one of them there. In the front, I have some Visionus stilbe. And then this is a red switchgrass right here. There's a couple random petunias. Those petunias were here when we moved into the house and have reseeded themselves every year since. I've never planted a petunia in the ground here, and they just keep reseeding themselves, so I just leave them. And then come around to the front side here, and I have Cobalt Liatris, or gay feather, right in the front there, which the rabbits have finally left alone. And then this is a bicolored spruce called Howels Tiger Tail. So you're probably able to see this pretty well. It's got 2 different colors in it. It's got a dark green and a blue. And so depending upon which angle you look at it, the branches sort of change color. And the neat thing is that those cones that you see on there when they first come out are bright, bright purpley red. I'll try to post a photo of that later. Just an absolutely cool plant. Tough as nails. It's out here all by itself. It faces basically due west out here and is just doing wonderfully. I wanted to show you again because this is a common problem that people have. So I have this massive Norway maple here in the front yard. Again, it was here when we moved in. And if we look up through the tree, you can see a big dead branch up there where it was pruned off and the bark is falling off. And if I went way out on the other side of the tree and looked up, you would see that the whole center of the tree is dead. Well, this tree has what's called girdling roots, and you can see that. So you can see, I'm going to kind of point with my foot. You can see this very large root here going around. Well, that root, and then it wraps around. You can see it going right along here, and it comes all the way back along here and back around. That root is called a girdling root, and so it is literally strangling the tree. And so this tree is not long for the world. It is definitely on a downward spiral, no pun intended. And so we're gonna take it out. But I wanted to get another tree started here in the front yard. So this is a tulip tree that I planted just a couple years ago, right when we moved in. And what I've done, it's probably hard to see here, is I trimmed out, there's one big limb that I trimmed out. There's another one right in there. So this one I just took out this year. A couple of these other ones I took out 2-3 years ago. And so I carved a very large chunk out of the tree, out of the canopy. You can kind of see it a little better there, so that my tulip tree would have room. And I think that this is a really smart thing to do for people, because I have a lot of customers who have trees that are getting too large for their location. They're sick, they're diseased, whether it be a spruce or a pine with needle cast or something, or an old maple like this with girdling roots. And so they don't want to lose all their shade or just the maturity of the yard. So plant another tree, trim it out so that it still has room to grow, and then I'll be able to take that tree out and have this tulip tree doing well. So that's kind of my little plan for over there. So this bed is a little bit of a hodgepodge in here. It's one of the few full sun locations in my yard, and one of the areas that I will trial perennials and move things to, transplant from other parts of the yard. But I want to show you a couple of things. This is a blue hibiscus right there, and I actually had 3 of them. One of them you can see is right there, and it is dead. And the other is that shorter one in the back, and then this one is taller. I planted these 2 years ago. All 3 of them basically died to the ground their first winter, and I cut them all back. And the 2 resprouted and started doing fairly well, and that one did not. Even though I started with a 24 or 30 inch tall plant, they were completely dead to the ground. And as I've often suggested to my customers, if the plant has a healthy root system, it'll rebound faster than if you replace the plant. So I just cut them all the way back, put them in. That guy died. These 2 are looking great. And so I think we've kind of made it over the hurdle, and they're going to do just fine. This is a very special plant to me. This is a daylily that was bred and developed by a good friend of mine by the name of Steve Todd. Steve, if you're watching, hello. Steve is Steve and his wife Bonnie are daylily hybridizers, and they have a beautiful yard full of gorgeous daylilies. And he literally goes around and collects the pollen from one and saves it possibly, and tries to crossbreed daylilies. And when my grandmother passed away many years ago, he talked with my parents about choosing a seedling daylily and naming it after her. So this is called Doris's Music. So Doris was my grandmother, Doris Serby, and she was a musician, a pianist, and had a beautiful singing voice. And so I think it's a very fitting tribute. And so I've got a couple. That's actually one of my divisions that I've taken and put over there for some friends. This is my original plant of Doris's music right here, which is also ready to be divided. And I didn't clean it up. I left it just the way so you could see it. So the flowers, as the daylily name suggests, last a day. So we've got fresh flowers and we've got some old flowers and we've got lots of buds still yet to come. And it usually blooms every year at the end of June, right around her birthday, which is fun. And so, yeah, beautiful. My bearded irises did absolutely fantastic this year. I inherited these from the previous homeowner. I moved them. They were in a very shaded location and did not bloom. I moved them out here, and these in the front here are bright purple with a little yellow in them. And then towards the back, there's some that are white. So this is another daylily that I got from Steve. And this one I actually own the naming rights to and have yet to name it. So if anybody has any great ideas of what I should name this one, let me know. But you can see it has this beautiful, bright, greeny yellow throat with just a little bit of purple on the ends. I really like that one a lot. The green throat is very rare in daylilies, and so it's kind of cool. And that's ready to be divided too. So in the front over here, I've got some little blue stem grass as opposed to big blue stem. So native grass. This is Carousel. Carousel is a nice compact little blue stem variety, and I love the little blue stem grasses. I love the color, that blue with just a little bit of kind of pinky purple in there, and then the fall color, it just gets better and better every day. Right towards the back here, I have a magnolia, a mammoth leafed magnolia. This is kind of fun. I mean, you can just see how big those leaves are. I'll put my coffee cup and hand out there so you can just see it's huge. So this is called Summer Love. And it's a white summer blooming magnolia with a beautiful fragrance. It's a hybrid. It gets nipped back every year by the frost. In fact, you can still see some remnants of the frost damage when the leaves were first coming out. We got a late freeze there in May, and it nipped a lot of the leaves. So these leaves are brand new, and some of the oldest leaves were damaged, but it did flower this year, and I'll post some photos of the flower on that as well. So I wanted to point out, these are Incredible Hydrangea. So it's a smooth hydrangea. This is Proven Winners variety, and this particular plant was bred for larger flowers and sturdier stems. So it's similar to the Annabelle hydrangea, but with a much, much sturdier stem. And I have never had to stake these or do anything to them. I planted these several years ago. They actually were kind of, I think if I remember right, hail damaged plants that didn't really look saleable, but were perfectly healthy root system. So I planted them out here. They have done exceptionally well. I inherited a bit of a perennial garden. Despite my best efforts, I've never been able to eradicate this bright purpley pink flowering plant, which is a knotweed. So it was planted here on purpose. I had it all cleaned out. I don't know that I had more than about 20 flowers last year on it, and it has just completely overtaken again. So I try to get in there and pull it out. I have planted other things in here. There's a lot of bee balm. I have a bunch of Summer Beauty Allium and some beautiful candy store phlox in the back. So there's a bright pink one in the way back, or a light pink one in the way back, and a brighter pink, kind of a corally or salmony pink one here in the middle. There's a lot of bee balm in this bed, and a white peony right there. The sand cherries in the back are remnants from the previous homeowner. I'm going to take those out. I cut it way back. That was about 15 by 15. I cut it way back, and I'm just letting that magnolia grow, and then probably in the next year or two I will take out those sand cherries. So just one more little bed to show you over here by the driveway, because it's a tricky spot, and some people have hot, dry locations like this. And this is brand new. I just cleaned this out last year, fall of 19, I guess, is when I cleaned this bed out. It had ground cover and some old barberries and other things in it that just didn't do well. And so I planted a few coneflower in here, which are just getting going. Those just got planted this year. And this is a black-eyed Susan called Little Susie. So Little Susie, I really like this one a lot. It is resistant to a disease that black-eyed Susans can get called rust. So it doesn't get any of the rusty, spotty foliage at all, and just really blooms very, very healthy, nice, and full. Next to it, I have little Quickfire hydrangea, and you've heard me talk about hydrangeas many times, and so these hydrangeas get blasted by the hot afternoon sun. So they have no protection from the south or west sun and are right next to my driveway and are just doing absolutely beautifully out here. And I have not watered these not one time this year. So even during the drought, I'm always harping on people about not overwatering. This bed, even this year with the drought, I did not water it one time. Next, I've got some regular sized prairie drop seed, which are just getting going along here. And then this year I did not get around to planting. I usually do right around the mailbox there by the driveway. I usually do some annual verbena because it does very well. And then on the opposite side basically matches, except for I've got some phlox towards the back of the bed, and otherwise everything else kind of matches the other side. So prairie drop seed, little Quickfire hydrangea, and the Little Susie black-eyed Susan. So last thing I wanted to show you, because this is another problem that a lot of my customers have. So I inherited these blue spruce along the driveway, and they actually probably from, at least on the video, probably look pretty healthy, and they are relatively healthy, all things considered. I've been spraying them for a disease called needle cast. And if you look up at the top of that tree there, you can see that the top is dead on that one. So this tree probably has two diseases. One is called Cytospora canker, and the other is called needle cast. And we're seeing a lot of this 1-2 punch on spruce trees. And so if you're not spraying them, they're probably looking a lot worse than these. You can kind of see down in here, that's the symptoms. Usually starting at the bottom, you start to get branches where the needles just fall off. So I spray these or have them sprayed for me because they're just too high for me to reach with my own stuff. The backside looks horrendous, but we're spraying them and trying to keep them going here. But pretty soon, I don't think that's going to work. So we're going to have to start taking some of these out. And these are the healthiest of the spruce. I have several other areas I mentioned last week. I showed you some of them that don't look anywhere near as good. So we're kind of slowly working our way around the yard, taking these diseased Colorado blue spruce out and replacing them with other things like Norway spruce and green giant arborvitae. So I just wanted to show you that because it's we have the same issues in our yard that all of you do, and also have budgets to work with, so I can't just take all of these down and start over. There's I think 7 of them along the driveway, and then I have I think 6 more remaining. I've taken down I think 4 among other trees, maybe 5 full-size Colorado spruce already, and it is a lot of work to take them down, and a lot of money too. So I slowly keep working my way around the yard, and I took down a big old, you can see the green spot in the grass there. That was a nasty pear tree that was infested or infected with fire blight. And as you've heard me talk, I can't stand pear trees. So I took that down and have just grassed over it for now. And when I take out the maple, we'll probably place another tree over here. I think either an oak or a Kentucky coffee tree. So I still have things on my wish list. I still have things that I need to take down and move around. So it's a work in progress, but I have fun doing it. And I hope that you had fun just seeing a little bit about what I do in my off time in my own yard And again, as always, if you ever have any questions, I'll turn the camera around here. As always, if you have any questions, if there's anything that we can help you out with, please feel free to give us a shout, make a comment in the comment section, or just stop in and see us. So until next time, have a wonderful day.